That's boxeldercounty.com.
Derek Overstreet, founder of the New Millennium Group. We're a financial planning firm. Listen, we're fiduciaries. We have advisors standing by right now to take your call. That's 888-999-6370. 888-999-6370. The reason you're going to want to call is we're going to help you retire 3 to 5 years before you thought possible. Now, imagine how that would be if you could actually retire 3 to 5 years sooner than your plan was. The way we do this is by putting together a step-by-step plan, taking into consideration any rental properties that you have, any pension income that you have, your Social Security. Listen, we put that all together for you in writing. It will allow us to build your income based on inflation. You know, inflation has been rapidly rising. You and I both need a plan that whatever we start out our income at, in 5 or 10 years, we're going to need 40% more income. So if you're one of those people listening and you'd like a plan in writing, give us a call at 888-999-6370. That's 888-999-6370, or go to utahsfinancialplanner.com.
Advertising used to be simple. Your options were radio, TV, newspaper, and let's not forget the yellow pages. Now it seems like a tidal wave of options. Podcast, cable TV, streaming, OTT, CTV, audio networks, smart speakers. On top of that, you need digital marketing for your website along with SEM, SEO, display, video, YouTube, email, and all the social media platforms. Look, you're the expert in your business. Wouldn't it be nice to have an expert to market you? We are Bonneville Salt Lake, the local marketing and media company you know and trust. We reach customers across all digital and social platforms and have the reach of traditional advertising available as well. We find your customer anytime, any place, anywhere on any device here in Utah or anywhere in the world. We work to optimize your results with our in-house local team of experts, providing you with qualified leads, not just impressions. Contact Stephanie Palmer at KSL for a free consultation, including a complete digital audit with no obligation or cost to you. Email spalmer@ksl.com. That's spalmer@ksl.com.
Traffic and weather together, brought to you by Sinclair's Dino Pay app. Save up to 20 cents per gallon. Here's Heather Kelly.
Well, we've got heavy rains moving up from Utah County into the Salt Lake Valley, really gumming up the works on I-15, especially if you're northbound from the point of the mountain all the way into downtown Salt Lake. If you're up in Weber and Davis County, US 89 is now closed at South Weber Drive. We have huge delays all the way back into the Ogden area, South Ogden area. And then we still have this jackknife semi on the connecting ramp from southbound I-215 to head west I-80 toward the airport. It's blocking most of the ramp. Traffic is having to get by on the left shoulder, and that's causing huge delays on the ramp and onto southbound I-215 from 700 north. S&S Roofing is your trusted source for quality and affordability. They have been the top roofing company in Utah for over 40 years. Schedule an estimate now. Get a free quote at snsroofinginc.com. Heather Kelly in the KSL Traffic Center.
A wet 24 to 36 hours ahead of us with another storm season moving in for the first half of the weekend. Sunday looks dry. Some afternoon pop-up showers may be possible. Quiet weather resumes next week. Rain showers currently and 50 degrees in Salt Lake City. I'm Tammy Kikuchi from the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios. Listen online at kslnewsradio.com. We're Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
Inside Sources. Inside Sources. America's voice of reason. Boyd Matheson on Utah's home for elevated conversation. Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
And welcome to another edition of Inside Sources, except instead of having Boyd Matheson, you were joined this afternoon by Greg Skordas and Rusty Cannon. Rusty, you and I have worked on a couple of shows at KSL at night, but it's fun to be with you on a live daytime show.
Yeah, it's my first live show, and I've got all kinds of buttons in front of me. I either just turned on my mic or launched a missile, one of the two.
There you go.
So I've got all kinds of buttons that I don't think I'm supposed to touch, but I'm ready to go.
And just looking at the 50 degrees and rain outside, it's probably good to be inside the studio with you.
Good day for radio, yes.
You know, I've learned something working with you, and that is that you and I share this sort of geekiness about politics.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because this weekend are the state Republican and Democratic conventions. And I'm going to talk about the Republican one first because we have a guest that's going to help us. But I'm watching very, very closely 3 races. And they're all important, but these are the 3 that, and they're sort of open races. The Senate position, Mitt Romney's open seat.
Yeah, that's a big one.
House District 2, I know Celeste Malloy is there now, but she's She
just barely got there.
Yeah, I mean, she's been there for like 5 months. I think some people are looking at that almost like an open seat. John Curtis opened his seat by running for Senate, so House District 3, and of course the Attorney General's race. Those are the 4 that I'm watching closely tomorrow just to see what happens. And you and I are going to break some of those down a little bit later in the second segment. But for the first segment, we're lucky to be joined this afternoon by Brigham Tomko, staff writer for the Deseret News, who covers politics, who's going to be at the convention tomorrow. Brigham, thanks for joining us again.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
You're kind of always with us and always available, and I really appreciate that.
Well, I love being on the show.
So talk to us about the Senate race. I mean, there's been some controversy there. It's an open seat. It's Mitt Romney's seat. I think a lot of people thought that John Curtis jumping in would sort of seal the deal. And I think Brad Wilson jumped in very quickly.
Oh, Brad was in very early.
And he was there. But it's even opened up a little bit past that. Tell us where that sits tomorrow.
Sure. So there are 10 Republican candidates vying for this seat. Maybe half of those feel like they have a more serious shot at emerging from the convention or qualifying for the primary ballot via signature gathering. And some of them are already guaranteed to be on that primary ballot in June, like Representative John Curtis, Brad Wilson, who was the House Speaker in Utah, and Trent Staggs, the mayor of Riverton.
Or Jason Walton. Jason Walton's the other one with the signatures. In the Senate race, yeah.
You're right. Jason Walton was the other one with the certified signatures. And so a big stepping back, I think, and looking at this race, you see people trying to differentiate themselves as the most Mike Lee-esque candidate. None of them are trying to run as a Mitt Romney 2.0, and I don't know what that says about the direction of the party or the state convention, but they're all trying to frame themselves as the most loyal to the Constitution, the most loyal to cutting spending, and these kinds of talking points.
So speaking of Mike Lee, has he endorsed a particular candidate in this race? And maybe I should ask you that also, Rusty. Do you know, Brigham, if he has?
He has not.
No, I believe he's been silent on this race, as far as I know.
Yeah, and maybe for good reason. So break it down. Like I said earlier, I think we all thought John Curtis was in the driver's seat, but it's become a little bit closer race, at least it appears to be.
Yeah, there's been scant polling on this. The Deseret News polled the Senate race a few months ago. A private organization called Noble Predictive Insights released a poll yesterday, and the big takeaway is that nearly half of Utah Republican primary voters are undecided. And so, although John Curtis held a sizable lead in both of those polls, most people don't know who they're voting for yet. And so John Curtis has more name ID. He has more fundraising momentum in this first quarter. He has more connections maybe within the Utah political community, certainly at the federal level, but it's up in the air who's going to emerge from the convention.
So another interesting thing about tomorrow is you'll have some that tomorrow could be the end of the road, right? So you mentioned the signature gathering candidates, Jason Walton, John Curtis, and Brad Wilson in the Senate race, but here's an interesting wrinkle, Brent Hatch. And I was excited that you just, in your article, had him listed as Brent Hatch, because every single ad that I hear reminds everybody what his middle name is, right? And so it's kind of, I'm glad. You get credit in my book for doing that, and just having his first name. But he's only turned in 21,035 signatures right now. So as long as you turn them in before the deadline, which my understanding is they were turned in.
And you need 28,000.
But you need 28,000. Right. So it's my understanding they're still counting for him. And so if he gets the 28,000 at some point, no matter how he does on tomorrow, he could have a shot. But other than that, these other folks have to get 40% to get out of there.
Well, a quick correction there. The signature gathering path has now closed for Brent Hatch. He originally submitted over 41,000 signatures by the deadline 2 weeks ago, but yesterday the Lieutenant Governor's office said that he does not have enough certified signatures to qualify for the primary ballot via that pathway, and so his hopes are completely in the hands of state delegates tomorrow.
All right. Well,
Rusty,
that's an interesting wrinkle.
You've got some different information about that, I thought.
Yeah. My understanding was that the Lieutenant Governor's office would be the ultimate arbiter of this, but that if they were turned in before the deadline, they can continue to count, and then if at some point you get that 28,000, you can get on the primary ballot. But
the problem with Brent Hatch's signatures is that lots of them did not meet snuff. They did not qualify and so could not certify. So despite turning in, like I said, over 40,000 signatures. He wasn't able to get the 28,000
That's a pretty
mark.
high error rate. That's surprising.
There was lots of talk, lots of rumors swirling around that it got towards the end of that period when they could gather signatures, and they started dumping money into signature gathering firms that are quick but not as effective.
Well, so in an interesting fact, so Greg, if you sign for me as a candidate a signature and I turn it in first, you're done. But then if you forget and go sign someone else's, and I like you, I'll sign yours too, and then they turn yours in, it gets rejected because it's only one signature per voter per candidate, right? So you get to the end of the cycle and the pool gets pretty thin, right?
Yeah, I've been told a rule of thumb is that for every candidate that has already submitted the signatures ahead of you, you'll probably lose another 7% of the signatures that you turn in.
Wow.
And in addition to those factors you mentioned before, that they have to be registered Republicans, right? That
correct.
are signing
yes,
this.
You're right. Yep, that's a big test as well.
And with respect to Hatch, I guess what we're hearing is half of his signatures are invalidated.
Well,
if you say he turned in
41,000.
40-some thousand, he's got 21. I mean, that seems like that's a high error rate.
And the calculation they may have made is maybe they didn't finish counting all of the signatures, but they knew that even if they did count all the rest of the signatures, and even if they were all certified, he still wouldn't have met that bar of 28,000. And so they probably stopped before they needed to go through every single one because they knew there was no way he could make it at that point.
Do you plan to be at the convention all day tomorrow?
I'll be at the convention all day tomorrow covering these statewide and congressional races.
So are you packing a lunch? You're going to need a lunch, several bottles of water, maybe some snacks. Having been through these, you're going to want to, and comfortable shoes. You need comfortable shoes. Have you got all that ready to go?
I have it ready to go.
Okay. Good.
Hopefully it's an exciting thing and won't leave people dozing off. And
Well, the interesting fact as well is some of those other candidates that don't have signatures, they have got to hit 40% or they're done tomorrow, right? So that would be Trent Staggs, Carolyn Phippen, and there are some others that I'm not recalling there, but some active campaigns that could end tomorrow.
Yeah, it'll certainly narrow down the field, but we're still likely to have 5 to 6 candidates in the primary ballot.
Wow. Well, Brigham, thanks for joining us this afternoon, and we'll be looking forward to your reporting on it. It's probably in Sunday's paper.
Thank you very much.
And when we come back after the break, Rusty, I want to continue this conversation and talk about the other races that I mentioned at the top of the show. Stay with us.
When the weather warms up, it's like a stampede, except instead of dust stirred up by hundreds of hooves, it's a cascade of phone calls to Advanced Window Products. This is Jeff Kaplan. Soon as the sun shines and the snow's gone, people want new windows and frames from Utah's #1 custom window maker, and the wait for installation grows longer. But right now, you can get near the front of the line by calling for a quote and get $2,500 off when you purchase 10 windows or more. That's on top of the incredible savings for the highest quality double-pane windows and frames, any style, any color. See, at Advanced Window Products, they actually build the windows here in Utah, they install the windows, and they guarantee them for life. There's no middleman, and they can pass the savings on to you. They even offer buy now, pay later. So get in before the wait grows longer and get the $2,500 off. Get your new windows this spring. Make the call. Advanced Window Products, 801-850-9100. That's 801-850-9100. Or visit AdvancedWindowsUSA.com.
Before the court.
Trump is claiming that he cannot be prosecuted.
Presidential immunity.
The 3-judge appeals court panel said if Trump has his way, former presidents would be, quote, above the law.
When the Supreme Court weighs in, we'll have you covered with fair and balanced reporting.
KSL News Radio, Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
Devotion to country, service to Utah. Brent Orrin Hatch had a front row seat, watching his father serve our state faithfully in the Senate. A constitutional conservative and lifelong Republican, Brent Orrin Hatch is a champion for the rule of law. He's running for Senate to stop this lawless president from destroying our country from within. Hatch will fight to secure the border once and for all and take on Mexican drug cartels to halt the flow of deadly fentanyl. Brent Orrin Hatch knows the national debt is just as big a threat to national security. Hatch won't rest until the budget's balanced and won't cave to the big spenders in both parties. Pro-life, deeply committed to religious liberty, rock-solid Utah conservative. Brent Orrin Hatch for Senate. Paid for by Conservative Outsider PAC, which is responsible for the content of this advertising. Not authorized by any candidate or candidates committee. www.copac.us.
The life of a small business owner. Keeping the lights on, calling all the shots. And then there's workplace accidents. 500-degree ovens, rusty nails. Danger lurks around every corner. Workplace accidents can happen, but there is an easy way to keep your employees covered. Talk to your agent about workers' comp coverage from Pi, or go to piinsurance.com and get a quote. Safety first, then Pi Insurance. Individual rates, offerings, and savings may vary, subject to policy terms and conditions. Not available in all states and situations.
Utah roofs have over 30 potential leak points, requiring detailed inspections to prevent water damage. Experts advise regular checks, especially for roofs over 10 years without recent inspection. Avoid water mishaps with Master Roofing's repair and restoration services. For a free assessment and to extend your roof's life, don't wait for a disaster. Call the Masters at 801-383-0072 or visit masterroofingutah.com today.
You've been trying to hold off, but you think it's time you might need a new roof? Best move you could make is to call the highest-rated roofing contractor in Utah. IWC Roofing has been working up there for 27 years. They offer the best warranty in the business, backed by Owens Corning. What's most amazing is they'll replace your entire roof in one day. Instead of Chuck with a truck showing up for a week of chaos and mayhem, you get professionals. IWC Roofing is in, they're out, and they power wash your driveway just to say thank you. They'll even send pictures from the roof so you know exactly what you're getting for your hard-earned money. Now, you think a highly skilled Owens Corning Platinum Certified contractor would charge more, but no. IWC offers a better price, and if you call now, they'll give you an extra $2,000 off your quote. $2,000 off. So call IWC Roofing for a free estimate, 801-232-5690, 232-5690, or visit IWCRoofingUtah.com.
Any Hour Services free furnace sale is going on right now. If you haven't scheduled your free estimate yet, do it now. Call Any Hour Services today or schedule online at anyhourservices.com.
With the three things you need to know this hour, I'm Tammy Kikuchi. First, both major political parties in Utah are having their conventions this weekend. Second, also this weekend is the Japanese Festival in downtown Salt Lake City, rain or shine. And third, the stock market is rebounding a bit from yesterday's down day. Currently 50 degrees and rain showers in Salt Lake City. Back to Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Get deeper insights on the news from Inside Sources.
Back to Inside Sources. I'm your host this afternoon, Greg Skordas, alongside Rusty Cannon. We're talking, Rusty, about the Republican convention tomorrow. We may talk about the Democrats a little bit too, but we had Brigham Tomko for the first segment, and I was interested in the 4 open races. We talked about the Senate race, but I want to ask you a little bit about the other races that go down ballot. Yeah. And first of all, I didn't understand, and I think a lot of our listeners may not understand the whole signature gathering process. It's controversial. It's caused some problems, but it does allow a person, and it looks like each race has its own number of signatures you have to get, which is based apparently on some percentage of the people in your district. But if you get through if you get enough signatures, you're on the ballot for the primary.
For the primary, yeah.
Otherwise, you've got to get what?
You need to get 40% to come out of convention.
Okay.
Right. So if you gather signatures and you meet the threshold, so for instance, in a congressional race, it's 7,000 signatures for any of those seats. And if you get that before the deadline, which is roughly 2 weeks before the convention, you're on the primary ballot. It says right there on the website. But if not, you need to get at least 40% to come out of convention to get into the primary. And so there's both dynamics. And this was an outgrowth of a long battle. I think it's about a decade ago. Where the settlement, I would call it, was, okay, well, we'll have 2 paths. And you can go the convention route or gather the signatures. The alternative at the time, as far as memory, and I'm sure I might get this wrong, was that the convention system could have gone away. And this was a way to preserve both, or at least you have the alternative and still keep the old. And so that's where we are now. So it's been about 10 years, I think.
Okay, so let's talk about House District 2. This is the seat currently held by Celeste Malloy.
Yep.
We know that it was Chris Stewart's seat. He resigned a little bit early. There was almost like a special election in November of last year. She was in that seat. So we would have thought she's in that seat now. She's been pretty active. We've seen her a lot. To me, I would have thought that's an incumbent's position. Republicans step aside, but there have been a number of people jumping in, opposing her in this race, and I think she's in for a little bit of a fight tomorrow.
So tomorrow is going to be a big day for Congressional District 2. You have several candidates on the Republican side, obviously, including Celeste Malloy. There's also Ty Jensen and Colby Jenkins, and I might be leaving. No, I think that was it on the list there as far as the Republican side.
And none of them have done the
gathered
signature
signatures.
process.
Yeah, so the tomorrow matters, and so you need to come out of there with that 40%. It's been a pretty active campaign between all of them, and yesterday it was shaken up a little bit. You had an endorsement.
A surprise endorsement to me.
Yeah,
absolutely.
It surprised a lot of people. Mike Lee endorsing Colby Jenkins. And Celeste Malloy will battle it out with him and the others in the race tomorrow. So it will be a very, very interesting day.
Okay, so I'm looking at the Republicans, and let's say that there are three. We have Celeste Malloy, we have Colby Jenkins, and we have Ty Jensen.
Yeah.
So they'll go through a round of ballots, and they'll eliminate a person at each round.
Correct.
Theoretically.
Yeah, theoretically.
That's why you get the 40%, because if one person gets 60%, that
It's
means
over.
nobody got 40.
Yeah.
Then it's over. That person's on the ballot.
Yeah, then they're the party nominee on the primary ballot at that point.
So let's say that one person's eliminated in the first round, the other two go, and they're both 45 versus 55%. They're both on the Republican primary ballot.
Primary. Yep.
Okay.
If you get 40 point whatever fraction you want to use, 001, you're in. If you have 39.9999, what have you, depending on the percentage, you're out. Yeah.
Okay, and I don't know if you can break this down for us too, Rusty, but what do you suppose was behind Mike Lee's endorsement of her opponent, given that he has to have been working with her fairly closely? I mean, the Utah delegation, Senate and House, they apparently have breakfast once a week, and they talk and they meet, and I think he was a big supporter of hers back in November.
That's an open. I don't want to speak out of turn. I would assume. I mean, there are votes that have happened since Representative Malloy has been in Congress that have been, not controversial just on one Congresswoman's part, but on all of Congress. The NDAA authorization, the FISA vote, there was a budget vote, appropriations essentially, and those were pretty heated, all of them. And depending on where you come down on those, can rub some people the wrong way or vice versa. Perhaps that's part of it, but I'm sure a lot of people will be wanting to talk to the senator tomorrow at the convention.
Yeah. Okay, and let's talk about House District 3. This is the one that's vacated by John Curtis's running for Senate. So it's an open seat.
Yep.
I see 4 names, maybe 5.
Oh, there's a lot of people. I think it's up to 10.
But I see 4 names that have got the signatures.
Correct.
That are moving on.
Yeah, those moving on: J.R. Bird, Case Lawrence, Stuart Pay, and John Frugal Dougal. Even have his middle name listed on the website there. They've all gotten over 7,000 signatures verified, and they are all listed as qualified for the primary. So no matter what happens tomorrow, there will be at least 4 people on the 3rd Congressional District ballot in June.
And the only way there would be a 5th name is if someone else gets at least 40% and in the final ballot tomorrow.
Correct.
So people will be eliminated. There'll be final 2. There could be as many as 2 more people on the ballot besides these 4. Unlikely that you would assume that one of these 4, maybe 2 of them will end up on there.
Yeah.
Any names on there that strike you as particularly interesting? I mean, Dougal, he's currently our
state auditor. Yeah, he's been state auditor for, I think it's been well over a decade. He's been
seems to enjoy that position.
Oh, he's been. I think
that's why he uses the middle name Frugal because he's the auditor.
Yeah, I think that was a campaign slogan that came around when he first ran a long time ago. I remember I was there when he was running, and that middle name stuck. And then J.R. Bird, we interviewed him on the night show the other night.
He's the mayor of Roosevelt.
Mayor of Roosevelt. Yep.
Out in the basement. Very impressive.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed him.
I think all delegates would agree.
Frugal,
These
I've
are all
listened
great
to
candidates.
speak before. He's a wonderful.
Yeah,
I love the guy.
Yeah, and Case Lawrence, a business owner. I see him a lot on billboards, things like that. And Stuart Pay. They're all. I think I'm not a state delegate, so my day might be a little shorter tomorrow for a lot of people. But these are all good candidates.
Yeah.
And I could see a virtual high across the board, just from judging all of these. But I don't know. It'll be an interesting horse race to watch.
Yeah, and there are a couple of others we should mention that didn't go the signature process. And I'm looking at the Republicans in House District 3 that didn't get enough signatures or didn't try, I guess. Catherine Dallin, Lucky Bovo, and Clayton Hunsaker, also Republicans running for that seat. So we really have 7 candidates tomorrow.
Well, you also have Senator Mike Kennedy. So State Senator Mike Kennedy, he's running for
I'm
House
looking
District
at
3.
the signature.
Yeah,
votes,
and
right.
so he's not up right now for his state Senate seat, and he's running here. He has, if I remember correctly, ran against Romney the first time around, if I remember right. But he is very popular with delegates. I mean, there are a lot of names in here that could make this a very interesting day.
Yeah, and a long day. If you start with 8 and you've got to get down to 2.
Yeah, I don't know how long they each get to speak, but I don't know, call it 4 minutes. I don't know what the time limit will be, but you start doing the multiples. Now, the good news is that the voting will be electronic, and it should go pretty fast and help with that. And let's just all pray that there isn't an effort to go away from that, because it will turn that into a Monday morning meeting.
Okay, and I didn't time this very well, Rusty, because I wanted to talk about 3 races, and I thought I have 5 minutes for each one, but I really don't. But so can you give us 30 seconds on the AG race?
Yeah, AG race. Derek Brown, he's gathered enough signatures to where he will be on the primary ballot. I believe he's the only one. So anyone else that wants to be on the Republican side, at least, Rachel Terry, Trent Christensen, and a Frank Mylar. Any of them would need 40 to get onto that primary ballot, or it'll just be Derek.
Yeah. So that'll be an interesting show, and you're going to be there. I forget what your role is.
They have special elections in the morning for some of the legislative districts that are smaller, that cross county lines, and so we'll be running those between 8 and 10 a.m. I have to help with one of those, but they'll wrap up by 10, and then everybody gets to the big meeting at 10:30. So,
all right. Well, interesting. I'm going to love reading the paper Sunday morning and going to the Deseret News and finding out what happened. Brigham Tomko, who was with us earlier, is going to be covering that, and then you're going to be covering that as well. So, yeah, let's watch these conventions tomorrow and support those. If you're a delegate, go there and listen and tell us how it goes. Democrats are having theirs at the same time at Cottonwood High School, my alma mater.
That's right.
When we come back, we'll talk about some local stories of interest.
1:30 at KSL News Radio. I'm Tammy Kikuchi. KSL's top local story this hour. The Republican and Democratic political parties are holding their conventions this weekend. Democratic Party Chair Diane Lewis told David Dujanovic they don't have as many hotly contested races as the GOP, but they've worked hard to get the word out about the Democratic races.
What we have been doing as a state party is going out and speaking to all these county chairs, and these county chairs have just really worked hard to get the word out about Democrats and how important we are.
The Republican convention will be held at the Salt Palace, while the Democrats will meet at Cottonwood High School. Rain or shine, the Japanese Street Festival will go on as planned tomorrow. Nihon Matsuri is on First South between the Salt Palace and the Delta Center from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. Organizer Stephanie Sueoka from the Buddhist Temple says one of the highlights is the Ogden Taiko drum guru.
We have had this hidden treasure, not really realizing their significance, and they have original members who are actually Topaz descendants.
Other performers include singers, actors, and comedians. There will be more than 40 vendors with food like sushi, boba drinks, and bento boxes, and free parking is at the Salt Palace off 3rd West. Your money at this moment, the Dow is up 208 points, S&P up 62 points, and the NASDAQ up 347 points. It's raining and going to continue to rain for several hours. We'll have a look at traffic and weather next. KSL News Time is 1:32.
News doesn't just mean information or dates.
It's the story of our local history being told in real time.
Be a part of the story. This is Tim Hughes and Amanda Dixon.
We hope to be a part of your story. We have you covered on KSL News Radio.
Spring is a great time to elevate the look of your home and landscape by adding beautiful flowers to the yard and patio. And pros and hobbyists alike know that the best flowers are grown by Olson's Greenhouse, right here in the mountain valleys of Utah. This is Brian with Olson's Greenhouse, and my family has been growing flowers with love and care for over 80 years. That's 4 generations of a local, family-run Utah business. So whether you're looking to add a pop of color to the back patio or a beautiful flower bed to the front landscape, flowers from Olson's Greenhouse are the perfect finishing touch to make your yard a joy to relax in. Stop by ogg.com or find us on Instagram at Olson's Greenhouse Gardens, where you'll find inspiring photos to get you going on your flower gardening journey. You can also find a local retailer carrying plants from Olson's Greenhouse. That's ogg.com for Olson's Greenhouse Gardens, where you can dream big, dream bold, and dream in color with beautiful plants and flowers from Olson's Greenhouse.
Paid for by government. Did you hear? A secret hoard of 1907 $10 gold Liberty coins has been found. These gorgeous 1907p gold coins are as bright and shiny as the day they were struck, and less than 200 of these gold coins are available. Coin experts are calling the secret U.S. gold coin discovery a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, and you can own a piece of the hoard. When you call, you are guaranteed a 1907 gold Liberty struck at the iconic Philadelphia Mint. With limited availability, you must call now. These 1907 dated gold coins are still in uncirculated condition with brilliant luster. That is 117 years of history you can hold in your hand. To learn more, call 1-800-386-8018. Call now and you'll receive a free bonus, a $50 value free with every order. Call 1-800-386-8018 now to secure your 1907p $10 gold Liberty coins before they sell out. That's 1-800-386-8018.
For over 10 years, IVC has been holding an event to celebrate women. Mark your calendar for Saturday morning, May 4th, to attend IVC's annual Mother's Day event, where you'll receive a complimentary assessment, which includes an ultrasound exam and consultation with one of IVC's board-certified physicians. If you're experiencing any pelvic or leg achiness, heaviness, or pain, this event is a perfect opportunity to get some answers and some relief. Give yourself the attention you deserve. Pelvic congestion syndrome, or pelvic venous congestion, is an important but often overlooked cause of chronic pelvic pain. And chronic leg achiness and pain are often symptoms of varicose veins. Don't worry anymore. The physicians at IVC can help. IVC has been named the best vein center in Utah Valley for over 10 years in a row. Don't delay. Space is limited. Go to ivein.com or call 801-379-6700. IVC. Life starts when the pain stops.
Traffic and weather together brought to you by Sinclair's Dino Pay app. Save up to 20 cents per gallon. Here's Michelle Rowe.
A crash southbound I-15 at 400 South just cleared. The 2 right lanes were blocked. Back traffic is still backed up through Rose Park. And then we have crews still working on this crash westbound I-80 at the North Temple on-ramp to join westbound I-80. All traffic is having to squeeze to the left to get onto I-80. Plan your special evening out in one of Salt Lake's most unique dining locations. 5 Alls in Foothill. 5 courses, 5-star service, and dining. 5alls.com. 5alls.com. I'm Michelle Rowe in the KSL Traffic Center.
Rain will continue tonight and tomorrow with temps in the 50s. Rain tapers off on Sunday and Monday with temperatures rising back to the 70s next week. Right now, light rain and 49 degrees. I'm Tammy Kikuchi from the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios. Listen online at kslnewsradio.com. We're Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
Hear elevated conversation on crucial issues. Boyd Matheson on Inside Sources.
Welcome back to Inside Sources. Today, I am one of your co-hosts for Inside Sources, Rusty Cannon. I'm here with the one and only Greg Skordas. Greg, we've made it through 2 segments. We're on our 3rd, and I have not pushed a wrong button yet.
Well, not that you know of.
No, that's true.
There you
that's
go.
True. Missiles might have flown out of a silo
right.
somewhere.
You haven't
but
hit the ejection seat.
Yeah, that's
yet,
right.
So you're still with us.
We're still rolling. So this segment's going to be really interesting. If you are a business owner, you're going to want to pay attention. If you haven't heard already, the FTC issued a rule, essentially voted on a rule this week about non-competes. So, Greg, as you know, as an attorney, these non-competes. So if you work for me and I share all of my secret sauce with you about the great, how great my product is, or a trade secret or what have you, I will often then have you sign a non-compete, right, to say, so you can't take those secrets and then go and compete against me. Some believe that's a good practice. Some believe it's not. But this week, the FTC voted 3-2 to essentially ban these for almost all workers in the United States. Like this is a big deal. Where
30 million workers are affected by this.
Correct.
I had no idea, Rusty,
Yeah.
that 30 million Americans, I think it's something like 1 in 5 or 1 in 7 workers
Yes.
are currently under a non-compete.
Yeah.
I don't know many people that are personally, but I guess I don't know what everybody's contract
I've
is.
seen them before. It is more common than you think. And there's a very good case on both sides. I land on one side, but there are two sides to this story. But we wanted to bring on a guest that is going to be able to give us some really good details on what this really means and what happens from here. So if you go back to Washington, D.C., there is probably not a more connected organization than the Business Roundtable in D.C. They know what they're doing, and they are involved in just about every conversation back there. And today we have on with us Corey Astle, who's a vice president at the Business Roundtable, a good man and a good friend. Corey, thank you for joining us on the show today.
Great to be here. Thanks a lot, Rusty.
So for those that haven't heard, if you can we sort of summed it up there, but what does this mean to the business world? Because this, I would assume, is going to end or start some serious litigation.
It is going to have a profound effect on the business world. So just to take a step back, the Federal Trade Commission issued a rule to ban non-compete agreements, declaring them unfair method of competition in violation of Section 5 of the FTC Act. So as you mentioned, non-compete agreements are something long used in the business world to prevent employees from leaving the business to go work for a competitor or start a competing business. And they do this so that they can keep their employees who've received training and insider knowledge and keep them from turning around and joining a competitor. So the FTC's ban applies prospectively, basically moving forward to all workers at all levels of a business, regardless of income or seniority. And it also applies to all current employees that are existing now, except what they call senior executives, and those are folks who work in policy-making positions and make a certain threshold of salary. So what this means is that the rule bans nearly all current and future uses of non-compete agreements. And as you mentioned, the FTC is already facing significant legal challenges. The U.S. Chamber of Commerce has led a group of business organizations, including the Business Roundtable, in filing a lawsuit yesterday. Other business organizations and industry associations have made similar announcements about filing their own separate lawsuits in the coming days. And these lawsuits will address the broad and sweeping implications of this rule. This area of law is typically the purview of state law. So here in Utah, we have state laws that govern non-compete agreements. It can't exceed 1 year. It has to be supported by consideration, which is a legal term meaning like the employee has to get something in return. It has to be negotiated in good faith and limited to a geographical area. And states are the ones who make these decisions through the legislature. And it varies widely. In California, they've banned it completely, and in some states, they have salary thresholds or it's limited to certain professions. But this rule is broad and sweeping, as I said, includes basically everyone. And the challenges on this rule are going to be based on whether the FTC has exceeded its authority under the FTC Act, as well as under the U.S. Supreme Court's major questions doctrine. So to give you a little background, Section 5 of the FTC Act directs the FTC to prevent unfair methods of competition or unfair and deceptive practices. But that statute also specifies that the FTC needs to pursue these objectives through adjudication. And what we mean by that is through individual cases. So the FTC has not traditionally had the ability to regulate from on high, as many agencies have that power. The FTC is supposed to make decisions on a case-by-case basis to look at a given trade practice in a particular case at a particular moment in time, because market dynamics continually change. The industries always change and vary widely. And so the real point is that Congress probably has not given the FTC authority to start promulgating competition regulations at this level. And so that's going to be litigated.
And Corey, I want to ask you a question that Rusty sort of touched on a little bit. The FTC did distinguish between non-disclosure agreements and non-compete agreements, and they said that non-disclosure agreements are still in place so that if an employee leaves a company with trade secrets or information about the customer list or something like that, I think the FTC is falling back and saying, look, employers still have an avenue to make sure that the employee doesn't hurt them. So that's remained in effect, but that doesn't seem to be satisfying some of the groups that you're talking about here.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I mean, preserving that area of law is important, but you still have specialized training that's given to employees. Employees invest heavily. Many companies and businesses will invest heavily in their employees to give them training. And this creates a huge disincentive for them to make those investments. And senior executives, yes, they're not allowed to share trade secrets, but they still have confidential information. They still have understanding of the business's strategic plans. And so, it's a fine line, and the two of those areas of law do go kind of hand in hand. And on the one hand, I think that the business world is happy with keeping non-disclosures, but this is another area that, there's a lot of crossover in that space. So that's the worry.
Corey, could anything be done about this legislatively? Let's say they actually do something in the Senate or Congress on this issue. Could they, or is this just out of their ballpark at this point?
Yeah, there are two things that Congress could do. There's really two avenues to take. One is in statute is a tool called the Congressional Review Act. And what that allows Congress to do is, with a majority vote of the House and Senate, but then signed by the president, you can nullify an agency rule. Now, in this case, the Democrats are in control of the Senate, and obviously we have a Democratic President Biden. So that's not very likely to work. And those have been used very sparingly in the past, but it really requires a single party holding all three, House, Senate, and presidency, and being a rule coming from the other party. And so that's probably not going to happen. The other avenue would be Congress just legislate in this area, come in and say maybe set the rules and I guess divide the power between the states and the federal government. That would still be challenged, probably still be challenged in court on grounds of, is this the purview of state law or not? But those are two avenues that they could take. Both of those seem, in the current Congress, unlikely and a steep climb. And so really the main avenue, and really almost the only avenue that opponents have to this, is litigation.
Through the courts.
And it will be litigated, and it will go through the courts, and it'll take years. And what we've seen in recent years is this is what's happening with rules, is that large and very consequential major rules are put into effect, and it takes years to litigate them. And in the meantime, we have change in administration and who might want to try to pull back on those rules or go forward even further. And so we do have this kind of yo-yo effect.
Well, that'll be quite a bit to watch. A lot of feathers flying, I'm sure, legally and everywhere else. Corey Astle, thank you for joining us. Corey Astle, Vice President of the Business Roundtable. An interesting issue, and Greg is an attorney. I'm sure you'll maybe hear about this
Watching
more,
that one in the
watching
courts,
this one. So thanks for sticking with us, and we will be right back on Inside Sources.
A fiduciary has the regulatory obligation to put your best interest first. Trajan Wealth is a financial fiduciary for your investments. With Trajan Wealth, the more you make, the more we make. Our interests are aligned. Most other financial advisors are brokers held to a lesser standard and are paid an upfront commission to sell you something. Call Trajan Wealth 801-899-7600. That's 801-899-7600.
Advisory services offered through Trajan Wealth LLC, an SEC registered investment advisor.
Where does a journey to wellness begin? Do you start looking for diet ideas? Or searching for exercise plans? Actually, you don't have to look far. Just look to the first two letters of the word wellness. We means you don't have to figure it out yourself. It means your hopes and challenges are a perfect match for our knowledge and resources. It means anything you want to achieve, together, we can achieve better. Because wellness begins with we. Intermountain Health. The power of we.
Sign up for KSL text alerts and you could win cash. Text the word cash to 57500 for a chance to win $250. That's cash to 57500. Plus, you'll get breaking news and traffic updates right to your phone. Want to win more prizes? Text contest to 57500. Jazz fans, text the word jazz for breaking Utah Jazz news. And Cougar fans, text BYU to 57500 for the latest on the Cougars. Message and data rates may apply. For an alternate entry method and complete contest rules, go to KSLNewsRadio.com.
Family Talk with Straight Talk.
You give and you give. It's time to get with Straight Talk Wireless. You get a reliable 5G network and unlimited data, and you get to choose who joins your family plan starting as low as $25 a line. Does it have to be family? It can be family or people you like.
Get more lines and more savings. Switch to Straight Talk for family plans starting as low as $25 a line per month for 4 lines. Find us at Walmart and StraightTalk.com. For network management practices, visit StraightTalk.com. Family plan discount with 4 lines, all on the Silver Unlimited plan. Taxes and fees apply.
Small business owners, we know tackling your to-do list can sometimes feel like going 12 rounds against a heavyweight champ. Except that heavyweight's gloves are made of something hard, like diamonds. So when a new to-do pops up, you're like, I can't. I'm boxing my diamond boxing glove-wearing heavyweight champ of a to-do list. At Progressive, we don't want to make your day any harder. That's why we make it easy with over 30 customizable coverage options, so you can finally land a knockout blow. See if you can save on business insurance in as little as 7 minutes at ProgressiveCommercial.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company. Coverage provided and serviced by affiliated and third-party insurers.
Are you stressing about your IRS tax problems? Have you received notices from the IRS threatening to garnish your wages, levy your bank accounts, or seize your property? You need an ally. Allies Tax Relief has tax attorneys and enrolled agents that are ready to fight for you. They have saved millions for taxpayers just like you. Allies Tax Relief can help put a stop to IRS collections and, most importantly, negotiate your tax debt. Here's Brenda, a happy client of Allies Tax Relief.
I owed the IRS around $57,000, and they're about to start garnishing my paychecks. I heard a commercial on the radio about Allies Tax Relief, so I thought I'd give them a call. After a day, they were able to at least stop the garnishments, and after a few months of negotiations, I walked away owing the IRS only $301.
If you owe the IRS, call Allies Tax Relief right now for your free consultation. Call 800-230-5174. 800-230-5174. That's 800-230-5174.
Put the equity in your home to work with a home equity line of credit and get 6.49% APR for the first 6 months. Learn more at cypresscu.com.
With the 3 things you need to know this hour, I'm Tammy Kikuchi. First, Highway 89 just closed for the weekend, making the trek home from Weber State's graduation a bit tough. Second, BYU basketball players will watch their new coach in action in Phoenix during tonight's playoff game. And third, Boeing is sending seven astronauts into space. Right now, it is 49 degrees and raining in Salt Lake City. Back to Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Get deeper insights on the news from Inside Sources.
Welcome back to Inside Sources. Alongside Rusty Cannon, I'm Greg Skordas. And Rusty, I want to talk about a court case that I think surprised a lot of people. And we're talking about Harvey Weinstein's conviction. If you recall, Harvey Weinstein was the Hollywood mogul that made a lot of people famous. He was apparently a genius at really there's some programs and some ideas and some things that he did that were really innovative, but it turns out that there were a lot of women that had dealt with him over the years that had concerns about the way he treated them, and the list became astronomical. I mean, we got into like 100 women who he had violated in some respects. He was prosecuted in New York, and he was prosecuted in California, and he was convicted in both jurisdictions.
Yeah, he's in prison, right?
Right. He's currently in the New York prison, but that's about to end. Of course, he's going to go to the California prison, at least until that's done, because the New York Court of Appeals, which is their highest court, overturned his conviction and said that the judge allowed testimony in that case that should not have been allowed, and that the jury was prejudiced by that. And because of that mistake, because of that, this court called it an egregious error, egregious and improper rulings, that that jury's decision can't stand, and his conviction was reversed.
So, what kind of issue was this about? Like, what did the judge do that would result in this? I mean,
yes. So it's a really interesting, and it's not a particularly complex legal argument, but Rusty, in cases where you deal with, and sex crimes are the perfect example, where you have what's called a he said, she said. And there are rules that allow that the government can present evidence to sort of bolster what a victim might say if you can find other victims who have had similar interactions with the defendant.
Okay.
And we call that it's a rule of 404B. It doesn't matter, but we allow. There are certain things you don't allow, which is like character evidence, or somebody's school teacher said, "Oh, he was the greatest kid in the world," or that kind of thing. That's not relevant. Or even like if you have a DUI and you've got 2 prior DUIs, we don't allow that in because it doesn't mean you did or didn't commit the instant one. We have to focus the eyes on the prize. What happened in this particular case? So in this case, Weinstein was charged with sexually assaulting 2 women, raping 2 women. And so the government could have just put those 2 women on, and the problem they had is that there was some consensual contact between the 2 of them. And so that makes it much more difficult. I was the head of sex crimes at the Salt Lake DA's office, and anytime you have a series of consensual sexual encounters and then one isn't, juries are uncomfortable with that. So the government, to bolster the evidence, the testimony of these 2 women, brought in a series of other women who said, you know what, he did some things to me that were also inappropriate. And the jury, hearing the totality of all that evidence, said, you know what, we're going to find you guilty. And they did. The Court of Appeals there in New York said, wait a minute, you shouldn't have brought in these other victims, alleged victims, because their testimony was too distant. It wasn't necessarily related. Some of them were not even in the state of New York. Some of them were past what would have been a statute of limitations. And some of them were more what you'd call sexual harassment. In other words, inappropriate comments and conduct and things like that in the workplace, where the case that he was charged with was sexual misconduct, touching, a physical case. So it's really a touchy issue, and it's a huge thing in the courts right now. But the Court of Appeals in New York said you shouldn't have allowed that evidence in. They threw it out. Now, that doesn't mean the case is over in New York. The government can still retry it. They just can't retry it with those particular witnesses, those corroborating, they thought, witnesses, because under the law, that's improper corroboration.
So they'd have to start over with different victims?
No. They can use the same victims. They just can't use the other witnesses who came in. The witnesses who corroborated and said, yeah, me too. He did it to me too. He did it to me too. And I use that phrase intentionally because this was part of the whole the whole Me Too movement. Well, wait a minute. We should be able to bring in that type of thing. And the law is pretty loose about it. Here's another hook, Rusty. Mm-hmm. In California, where he was also convicted, there was similar evidence brought in by the California prosecutors of witnesses, uncharged conduct by other witnesses. So now he's being released from the New York prison. He's going to go to California because he's got to serve 16 years there. But that case is still up on appeal in the California Supreme Court for the exact same alleged
same reason.
Misconduct by the judge.
So at this point, where does he go? I mean, he's still in prison, right?
Right.
He should stay in prison.
Well, he should stay. He's not going to stay in the New York prison because he's not guilty of that crime anymore. They threw it out. But he's convicted in California, so he's going to be shuffled to California, and he'll do his time there while that case is being appealed. If that case is overturned, he walks. He's a free man, unless New York picks up the ball again, which their prosecutors are claiming they're going to do, and say, look, we're just going to retry it again. We just won't use that corroborative evidence.
Okay, so as an attorney, you would know this. How hard would it be for New York to rebuild the case and do it again and convict?
That's going to be a very hard thing for a couple reasons. One, you may have some witnesses, the underlying victims, the 2 that he was charged with, might say, you know what, I'm not going through that again. And that's absolutely their prerogative. Yeah. So if they have reluctant victims, that's a problem. They also, just by definition, the prosecutors in the state of New York did feel that they had a weak case. And they did feel like in order to prevail, they needed to bring in these other witnesses, these other corroborative witnesses. And so they only did that because they wanted to make sure they had a strong case. They don't have that strong of a case anymore. Mm-hmm. Will they retry it again? My guess is they will. Mm-hmm. That the victims on the underlying charges themselves will still come in and testify. Just the state won't have all this other evidence that they can add to it so that the jury can see really the character of this man, the person that he is, that he's just a habitual groper.
So who made the error? How did this happen? It seems hard to believe.
Yeah, it's part of the appellate system. So the prosecution and the defense are getting ready for trial, and the prosecution says, Judge, we're going to call these 6 or 8 witnesses. And the defense says, you can't call them. They're not related. They're not close enough. And the judge makes a weighing decision. And he says, you know what? I'm looking at the law. I think, or he or she says, I'm looking at the law. I think that I can allow that testimony to come in. So the error was committed by the judge, but judges only react. They don't create. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So they only react to what's in front of them. So it happens all the time. We have pretrial motions, a motion to admit evidence, motion to exclude evidence. And those decisions are always looked on by the Court of Appeals depending on how the verdict came down. So when a verdict comes down, of course there are going to be appeals. Bill Cosby's another example.
Yeah,
basically
it
walked.
sounds familiar to Bill Cosby. Yeah.
Exactly, a very, very similar situation. And so the Court of Appeals looks at it and says, you know what, Judge, you really shouldn't have allowed that testimony. And by the way, it was a 4-3 decision by the New York Court of Appeals, and the 3 dissenters really hammered the majority and said, you've just taken the Me Too movement back decades. You've taken what we've tried to do for women's rights back a long time. You know what I mean? You've really stood.
But But that's not supposed to weigh in, though, right? I mean, or is it? I mean, it should be the legal argument, right?
Right, it is. But it was a pretty scathing dissent where the majority is saying, you know what, you have to have a fair trial.
Yeah,
you have to. Every case that's tried has to be heard on the facts of the case, the evidence that's there, and extraneous stuff has to be relevant enough and close enough in proximity that's admissible. And in this case, the Court of Appeals said, you know what, Judge, you went a little too far. If they try it again, we'll see. My guess is they probably have little choice. Their backdrop, of course, Rusty, is he's going to prison in California, 16 years. Maybe they'll feel like enough's enough, but that case is in jeopardy too.
So they essentially put him on a bus, drive him across the country to another prison? Is that how that works?
That's almost exactly right, to another prison. Well, when we come back after the break, we're going to go on campus and talk to one of our KSL at Night hosts to talk to us about what's going on American campuses all over. Stay with us.
KSL FM Midvale.
KSL Salt Lake City.
From the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios, this is KSL News Radio.
Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
2 o'clock at KSL News Radio. I'm Tammy Kikuchi. Local story this hour. Getting home from tonight's Weber State graduation will be a lot harder than usual. KSL News Radio's Adam Small reports on this weekend's Highway 89 closure.
UDOT has shut down southbound Highway 89 at South Weber Drive so the Weber Basin Water Conservancy District can install a new pipeline under the road. UDOT spokesperson Mitch Shaw says they tried to shift the project to another time to avoid conflicts with the commencement ceremony, but the district's contractors couldn't get what they needed earlier than now.
We know that the closure is going to be annoying and it's going to be a nuisance to the traveling public, but we need to do it.
You'll have to take I-15 until the closure gets lifted right before the Monday morning commute. BYU's men's basketball team are in Phoenix to get acquainted with their new coach, Kevin Young, on the NBA playoff stage.
It's not common for a current NBA coach who's transitioning over to a new college basketball head coach position to still be in that role in the NBA and juggling both.
That was BYU Insider. With KSL Sports' Mitch Harper, Young's team faces off against the Timberwolves for Game 3 of the series. Looking at national news with ABC News, Boeing is getting ready to send 7 humans into space for the first time on their Starliner capsule. The astronauts take off on their May 6th flight. Your money at this moment, the stock market's just closed and the Dow is up 153 points, the S&P 51 points, and the NASDAQ also up at 316 points. It's still raining and will be for several hours. We'll have a look at traffic and weather next. KSL News Time, 2:02.
You know what's great about KSL's traffic coverage? Trained traffic reporters and real listeners.
Trading information and making the commute safer and faster for everyone.
Every 10 minutes on the 9s, we have you covered on KSL News Radio.
Devotion to country, service to Utah. Brent Orrin Hatch had a front row seat, watching his father serve our state faithfully in the Senate. A constitutional conservative and lifelong Republican, Brent Orrin Hatch is a champion for the rule of law. He's running for Senate to stop this lawless president from destroying our country from within. Hatch will fight to secure the border once and for all and take on Mexican drug cartels to halt the flow of deadly fentanyl. Brent Orrin Hatch knows the national debt is just as big a threat to national security. Hatch won't rest until the budget's balanced and won't cave to the big spenders in both parties. Pro-life, deeply committed to religious liberty, rock-solid Utah conservative. Brent Orrin Hatch for Senate. Paid for by Conservative Outsider PAC, which is responsible for the content of this advertising. Not authorized by any candidate or candidates committee. www.copac.us.
Good morning. I'm the 40% off window company.
40% off? Of what?
Hey, 40% off!
Yeah, I'll bet it's your biggest sale of the year. This week only, because you need a model home in our neighborhood. Well, nothing. It's baloney. Hi, this is Kathy.
And Doug of Window World. When you hear those things, you know you've entered the baloney zone.
Resist the force of the baloney zone.
Find Window World online at windowworldutah.com.
Or call Window World at 281-8111. That's 281-8111.
And that's no baloney.
An emergency can happen any second. Here's a few seconds to think about where you'd go. When you need medical care fast, the closest emergency room is a smart thing to know. Common Spirit Health ERs are your direct path between feeling scared or uncomfortable and feeling better. Find emergency care in your neighborhood at mountain.commonspirit.org.
Beat the spring cleaning rush with big savings and priority booking by calling our heroes at ZeroRest. Think about the dust, dander, and bacteria living and breeding in your carpet, upholstery, air ducts, and more with nowhere to go. Did you know as many as 1 in 5 Americans suffer from allergies caused by particles frequently found in the air inside most homes? Not only is indoor air quality an issue year-round, but especially now that allergens such as pollen are coming out of hibernation, ready to invade your home. If you or anyone in your family suffer from allergies or asthma, or you just want cleaner, healthier air, ZeroRes can help. Check out the 3,300 raving customer reviews online with a 4.8 Google rating. Right now when you call ZeroRes, get one room ZeroResify from Salt Lake's #1 carpet cleaner starting at just $25 with a 4-room minimum to get that true spring cleaning feel. Call ZeroRes right now, 801-288-9376, or go online to ZeroRes.com and say you want the KSL special, ZeroRes. Spell it backwards or forwards. It's the right way to clean.
Traffic and weather together, brought to you by Sinclair's Dino Pay app. Save up to 20 cents per gallon. Some challenges out on the road. Here's Michelle Rowe.
Yes, weather is playing a part in traffic today. We do have a couple of crashes on the West Belt. One is going to be right about North Temple. This is as you're headed southbound. They have moved that crash over to the right at this point. And then further south, you're also going to run into another crash. This is as you're trying to join I-80 to go westbound. You will have to narrow down to one lane and squeeze past that crash that is on the right. Also looking at slowdowns on I-15 going through the heart of the valley. Support new budding art during Park City Galleries Association's monthly gallery stroll and bouquet build with flowers provided by local growers. See what's cropping up. Visit ParkCityGalleryAssociation.com. I'm Michelle Rowe in the KSL Traffic Center.
Rain continues tonight and tomorrow, but tapers on Sunday and Monday with temperatures rising back into the 70s. Right now, 50 degrees and rain showers. I'm Tammy Kikuchi from the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios. Listen online at kslnewsradio.com. We're Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
Inside Sources. Inside Sources. America's voice of reason. Boyd Matheson on Utah's home for elevated conversation. Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
And welcome to hour number 2 of Inside Sources, except I'm not Boyd Matheson. I'm Greg Skordas, and I'm alongside Rusty Cannon. Rusty, we got through the first hour, but the second hour is going to be even more fun, I think.
Even better.
We've got some stuff to talk about here. Last night on KSL at Night, I was co-hosting with Leah Murray, who is the executive director of the Walker Institute at Weber University, and she's our go-to person when it comes to what's going on college campuses. And we talked for a minute, but I want to get into it a little bit more about what's going on college campuses right now with these protests. And it started, I think, at Harvard and Penn, and it's expanded into Columbia. I'm sure there are others where students are protesting what's going on in the Middle East right now. And maybe to help us break it down, because I'll just butcher it, let's bring Leah in. Leah, thank you for joining us this afternoon.
Of course, it's so lovely to be with you.
And tell our listeners what's going on campus and why right now on some of these campuses.
Yeah, so first of all, I want to be a little nervous about being your go-to person, Greg, for what's happening on campuses, because my goodness, I don't want to answer for all the things. But basically what we see happening across the country, although I would argue I haven't seen it in Utah, and mostly it's happening at like elite colleges, if that makes sense. Like we're talking Harvard, we're talking Columbia, we're talking MIT. We're not talking public universities like we have in the state of Utah. A lot of students have a lot of feelings about what is happening in Gaza, right? So their concern is that the United States is pro-Israel. They wish that the country was a more, pro-Palestinian position, was taking a more pro-Palestinian position. And then just like I think all 18 to 22-year-olds do, they're at a college campus. They have a lot of time. They don't have a job, right? They actually have all this time. And so what they do is they end up, they have a lot of time to think. They have a lot of activity, opportunity, if that makes sense. They're able to do things. And so this launches a lot of times in college campuses into protests when the young people are feeling like they're not being heard.
So, Leah, correct me if I'm wrong, a lot of these protests are taking part on private college campuses.
Correct.
And there was some news made as they cleared them out in Columbia University, I believe. But these private campuses have the absolute right to do that, right?
Have the absolute right to
clear out the students, right? If they're being disruptive or what have you.
Yeah.
It's private property, and they can do that.
Rusty, that is such a good question, and I actually think goes right to the heart of it. So I think that administrators on a campus feel like they have the obligation to make sure campuses are a safe place for learning. So to a certain extent, that could include, living with a little bit of protest. Does that make sense? Because you might be like, free speech matters and your right to peacefully assemble matters. And on a campus, maybe this is a good place to learn how to do that in a safe way. On the other hand, if you are a tent encampment, right, like so you're making it so that other students can't get to class, then you probably have an obligation to clear that out. The question at Columbia was whether the president had the prerogative to call in the New York Police Department, right? So they didn't use Columbia security to clear that out. Does that make sense? Like they brought in, the city police, and a lot of students had a lot of problem with that choice being made, if that makes sense.
No, it makes a lot of sense, Leah. And let me ask you this. You and I talked about this a little bit last night off the air, but I want you to talk about it to our listeners because I'm old enough, you are certainly not, and Rusty's not, to remember what was going on college campuses during the Vietnam conflict. And it was huge, and it was systemic. I mean, it was throughout the whole country. How does this one feel or seem different to you, if at all?
No, and I feel like it's possible it's similar in what I just said earlier, that you've got, thousands of 18 to 22-year-olds on a campus, right, which is a real great opportunity to get into protesting and doing those kind of things. So to a certain extent, that feels similar. I mean, I think the major difference today would be how fast, right? So if you had a protest on a campus in 1971, everything you might hear about it later would have been a still photograph or hearsay, whereas today you've got kids like recording with their iPhone. Does that make sense? Or their, their smartphone, and then able to share that. So I feel like, how do I say, like the access to what is happening in these protests is probably a lot more than we ever would have seen, 50 years ago.
So I might sound like an old man when I ask you this question, Leah, but so how many do you think of these protesters are students, how many are not, and how many of them, I mean, there's been evidence that some there really don't know what they're doing there other than, I heard it was something to do and here I am, right?
Yeah,
I think that's a fair question to ask of, you take a sample out, and there's been some video evidence put out there of, do you know what you're doing here? And the answer is no, but I'm here. I mean, is it fair to make that case?
Yeah, I think it's a good question to ask, if that makes sense. So I think, like I keep saying, young people get into trouble real quick, right? So, and they're on a college campus, and this is a moment that they feel like they have something to say, right? Like, I think young people feel like they have something to say, but not always, I don't know, like they're a lot of passion looking for a cause, Rusty. Does that make sense? Like, I do think that is true. Like, people are kind of like, I just want to be here because there's, this is happening, and so I'm here. The other thing that's happening on Columbia's campus specifically is it's an open campus. So there are people, how do I say, if you and I visited New York City, we could just wander on that campus. That has always been true. So the deal is there are people coming from other parts of the city taking part in the protest who are not students. And then it's kind of like, I don't know why they're there. Does that make, you know what I mean? Like, and then the campus is trying to figure out who are actually students, who are just people who are from New York City who are visiting, and how do we manage all of that?
Yeah, I'd wonder, don't they need to be in class, Greg? I went to college too, and it seemed like you kind of did need to go to class and take
Especially
the test.
This time of year. Leah's talking to us about
how do they have time to sit there and do all this? I don't know.
Leah, let me ask you another question. It seems like a lot of the administrators, the college presidents, some of the people are really under the radar right now of Congress, of their local, just the school population, their locals there. I mean, what's going on with that? Why are they being so thrust into the spotlight here?
Oh my gosh, is there a job right now on the planet I would never want to have as a college president, right? Like, because they can't control it, Greg, right? So what happened at Columbia was the president told Congresswoman Elise Stefanik that she would get everything under control. The students heard that, and they were kind of like, you're not going to control me. So they set up a tent encampment overnight while she was like the night after she testifies to Congress. So she comes back and she's like, look, I just told Congress I was going to control this. That's when she calls in the NYPD, and it's just gone south from there. Does that make sense? So I think a little bit for presidents, whatever they do is going to be wrong to some major group of people, whether it's donors or trustees or elected officials or to their students and their faculty and staff.
And I think also the issue in some of these cases has not just been the fact that they're there, but also what they've been doing, right? I mean, there have been some egregious acts, I think, against students, and that's where it's gotten out of line. I believe that's why some of these, have been cleared out or shut down or what have you, where there's nothing wrong with being there and doing your thing in general, but when you're starting to intimidate or hurt or cause harm or those kinds of things, I think that it seems to be has been the underlying issue of some of these getting cleared out.
No, Rusty, I couldn't agree with you more. So the issue has been, if this were a protest of just like, I don't like that you called the police. Does that make sense? Like, I really don't want the police here. I think that's a different question. But absolutely inside of this protest, while I imagine there are many students who are there and they don't really know why they're there, or there are many students who are there very peacefully caring about the issue, there have been issues who have been behaving in an anti-Semitic way that makes Jewish students on campuses feel unsafe. So that is true at Columbia. It was true at Harvard. It was true at UPenn. The reason why Congresswoman Stefanik was getting into it, does that make sense, is like that had already started happening in the wake of Gaza. So you are absolutely not wrong. There is bad acting happening.
That was Leah Murray, one of our co-hosts on KSL at Night. Thank you for joining us. And when we come back after the break, let's go to the Supreme Court and listen to some arguments that were made just within the last couple days regarding immunity for a former president. Stay with us.
Josh loves springtime in Utah, but he hates to paint, so he called Rhino Shield.
We have a cedar-sided home at the edge of the woods, painted like 1980s beige, and we wanted something that was more of a mid-century and modern look. We were driving around and we saw a sign in somebody's yard and said Rhino Shield. It's not paint.
Rhino Shield's ceramic technology is formulated for our unique climate here in Utah and is Class 1 fire rated.
Gave Rhino Shield a call, and in fact, they were fantastic with the arrangement on schedule. The 25-year guarantee was important to us. This this is our forever home, and we want to make sure that whatever we're doing is going to last a long time.
Utah, you can have the 25-year guaranteed protection of Rhino Shield for 15% off the regular price.
I'd say if you're thinking about Rhino Shield, just do it. It's been 2 years now, and it still looks like the day it went on.
This offer is limited, so call 435-246-4466, 435-246-4466, or RhinoShieldWest.com.
Go Rhino Shield. Don't let this happen to you.
Some people have been stuck for over 20 minutes just trying to get from 4 and 500 South up to the North Temple intersection.
Know before you go.
You're going to see your typical congestion areas on city streets.
Cleanup of a crash continues westbound I-80.
Get traffic and weather together every 10 minutes on the 9s. It could mean the difference between getting to your destination on time or...
We have you covered.
Mornings and afternoons
on KSL News Radio.
Howdy, folks. It's me again. And surprise, it's tomato frenzy time at J&J Garden Center in Layton. Right now, all large-sized tomato plants are only $2.99 each. That's half price and grown from seed right here at J&J. And while you're here, pick up a bag or two of J&J's private label all-purpose premium topsoil to help strengthen your vegetable garden for only $5.98 a cubic foot bag. So come to the Tomato Frenzy sale at J&J Garden Center in Layton, where they have the best products at the best price and the best employees, too. Take the Layton Parkway exit, Main Street to Gentile, then west 2 miles. You got to see it to believe it. You really do.
Country grown to your home, J&J Garden Center.
What's wrong?
My travel rewards card didn't earn enough miles for my vacation.
Are you crying? Are you crying because of that other credit card?
Uh-huh.
Well, switch to the Capital One Venture card. Venture lets you redeem miles on any travel purchase.
Really?
Yep, and you earn unlimited double miles on every purchase every single day. The Capital One Venture card. What's in your wallet?
Terms apply. See CapitalOne.com for details.
Hey everyone, it's Ted from Consumer Cellular, the guy in the orange sweater, and this is your wake-up call. If you're paying too much for wireless service, you don't have to keep having that nightmare. Consumer Cellular has the same fast, reliable coverage as the leading carriers for less. And for a limited time, new customers receive their second month free when they sign up and use promo code MONTHFREE by May 31st. So why keep spending more than you have to? Seriously, wake up and call 1-888-FREEDOM or visit consumercellular.com.
Taxes, fees, and other third-party charges will apply. See website for additional details.
For over 10 years, IVC has been holding an event to celebrate women. Mark your calendar for Saturday morning, May 4th, to attend IVC's annual Mother's Day event, where you'll receive a complimentary assessment, which includes an ultrasound exam and consultation with one of IVC's board-certified physicians. If you're experiencing any pelvic or leg achiness, heaviness, or pain, this event is a perfect opportunity to get some answers and some relief. Give yourself the attention you deserve. Pelvic congestion syndrome, or pelvic venous congestion, is an important but often overlooked cause of chronic pelvic pain. And chronic leg achiness and pain are often symptoms of varicose veins. Don't worry anymore. The physicians at IVC can help. IVC has been named the best vein center in Utah Valley for over 10 years in a row. Don't delay. Space is limited. Go to ivein.com or call 801-379-6700. IVC. Life starts when the pain stops.
Getting help with electrical repairs is easier than you think. All you have to do is call Any Hour Services or schedule an appointment at anyhourservices.com. No one helps more homeowners than Any Hour Services.
With the 3 things you need to know this hour, I'm Tammy Kikuchi. First, graduates are throwing their mortar boards into the air this weekend. Second, Salt Lake can claim Lego champions. And third, NHL hockey in Utah might spark interest in sled hockey. Right now, 50 degrees and raining in Salt Lake City. Back to Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Hear elevated conversation on crucial issues. Boyd Matheson on Inside Sources.
Welcome back to Inside Sources. I'm Greg Skordas alongside Rusty Cannon. And Rusty, this week we had some really, I guess, because, I mean, you're into this politics stuff. I'm sort of into the legal stuff. And we had
but you got to remember, I always wished I went to law school.
Yeah, that's
so
right. I think you would have been an incredible lawyer, by the way. There's still time. You're
It's never too late.
Yeah, but the Supreme Court was hearing arguments this week on the issue. It's a very limited issue. And, of course, it's related to Donald Trump's criminal case it's in the state of it's in Washington, D.C. They're listening to argument there over to what level a president, and in this case a former president, has, what level of immunity he has for acts that occurred while he was in office, and then he's charged later on for a crime. Should he have immunity? Now, we know that we have this concept called governmental immunity.
Yeah.
And we shield our governmental employees. I'll give you a best example I can think of, which is police officers. Sometimes they have to use force.
Yeah.
Sometimes they have to do something that if you and I did it, it would be called a homicide. But they have immunity because they have to act. They have to do things. It's part of their course of work. It's part of what they do. And so we grant them that level of immunity. We haven't had presidents charged with criminal conduct, but we do now. In fact, there's a trial going on right now in New York, the hush money trial. But the one in D.C. involves the conduct that the former president did allegedly to upset the results of the 2020 election.
Yeah, January 6th, essentially.
Right, exactly. So the Supreme Court was hearing those arguments. We've got Perry Russum from ABC News to help us break that down, and hopefully he can explain it a little better than I just did. Perry, thank you for joining us this afternoon.
Of course.
And talk to us about the arguments, and really, because we started at the trial court, and the trial court said, no, you don't have immunity. The D.C. Circuit jumped in unanimously and said there's no level of immunity. But the Supreme Court, just in some of the arguments, was weighing it a little deeper than that and saying maybe there is some level. Is that the way we're reading the tea leaves here?
Yeah, so it gets a little muddy when the justices start talking about what's the difference between an official act and a private act. And it seems like this case is going to get kicked back to the lower court so the lower court can figure out, in this case, what's the difference between an official act and a private act. And this is a major deal, not just for Trump. This is bigger than Trump. This is about the presidency as a whole and whether, presidents can be criminally prosecuted for things that they're doing in office. I mean, one of the examples that we've been talking about here at ABC is former President Barack Obama with Anwar al-Awlaki, a U.S. citizen who was killed without due process overseas and citing national security. Could, Obama be charged for something like this? So the justices want to be very, very, very careful with this case in terms of making sure they make the right decision. A decision should be coming back by June, but by all accounts, it seems like this trial for Trump will be kicked back past the election, possibly into next year.
So, Perry, the questioning that I was able to hear from justices was fascinating, where just like you mentioned with President Obama's example, you could go back through history of our presidents, and there would be plenty to possibly, cause issues, right? They brought up drone strikes. They brought up, all kinds of things. Was I catching
internment
that
camps?
Yeah, internment camps, exactly.
Yeah, they brought internment camps with FDR, right, when we were in Japanese internment camps.
Yeah, so that's the issue they were getting to, I think you're alluding to, right, is that this is more than current day, right? This could be an earth-shattering, this could be a big deal.
Yeah, and the reason that it's happening now is because this is the first time in U.S. history that a former president is being criminally charged. And what some of the conservative justices are worried about is creating this vicious cycle of prosecutions of the president that could just be going on for who knows how long. And they say presidents have to have some kind of protection from prosecution. But the liberal justices are kind of skeptical of this idea, that absolute immunity could go unchecked. And some of the hypotheticals that they were bringing up is what happens if the president orders the military to assassinate a political rival? And what if the president orders the military to stage a coup? Would that be considered an official act? And Trump's lawyers are saying, if you get into the details of the hypothetical, it is possible that could be considered an official act. So there's a lot of hypotheticals the justices are bringing up. It's clear that they see the full scope of this, not just being an issue right now, but an issue the country could be looking at for the future.
Perry, you mentioned something earlier about the fact that it seems to be heading toward the Supreme Court kicking the case back down to the trial court for some findings on whether and to what extent the former president's conduct was an official act versus a private act. And by doing so, they will, by necessity, forestall the criminal case. We're going to go back to the trial court for more argument. And some people are saying that's a win all by itself for Trump, because it's unlikely now that case will get to trial before the November election.
It is. I mean, that's been the game plan for Trump and his campaign and his team this entire time with every single court case that we've seen. It's delay, 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 delay. They wanted to get as close to the election as possible. They want it past the election in case Trump does win, that he could have the ability to pardon himself. And even just getting these trials closer to the election is that Trump would have the ability to use these trials to his own political advantage, saying, look, see what they're doing to me. This is what they're doing to me. It's, some of the playbook that we're seeing happening right now in the courtrooms outside of New York, where he goes every single day in front of cameras and says what he has to say, slamming the judge, slamming the trial, and he's slamming as many people as he can to try and, stir up his base.
So, Greg, you alluded to this, and I'll ask the same question. Could this affect, or how could this affect Special Counsel Jack Smith's case against Trump? Is that what you were talking about, Greg, when you mentioned? Yeah,
this is the one specifically where I was mentioning that this is probably going to get kicked back past the election, because there's such a long process that it appears is going to go this way, where the big hang-up really is what's an official act, what's a private act. So it seems like they want to kick this down to the lower courts for them to figure that out.
And Perry, you mentioned also that Trump could pardon himself, but he could also appoint a new executive prosecutor in the case. He could also, his Justice Department could be different, and his Justice Department might not have the wherewithal or the energy to prosecute this case. They may just drop it, correct?
Yeah, that is another possibility. And, we are in territory that we as a country have never been in before. And it's clear that the justices acknowledged the moment. They were asking a lot of questions. This was a very long hearing, 3 hours plus, where it's clear that they understand the weight of this moment, with multiple justices saying this affects the future of the presidency as a whole. This is a turning point in the presidency. So it seems that they want to be as careful as possible and get as much information as possible before making any kind of decision.
So the statement that it's likely to go back to a lower court is based on what, the line of questioning from the various judges and reading those tea leaves?
Yeah, it's tea leaf reading by some of our reporters here who just follow the Supreme Courts unlike anybody else in the industry. So listening to them, they're the ones that know how these justices speak, the patterns, the intonations of their questions, just getting a general idea of how everything works. Sometimes we see where justices are certainly in favor of one side, where they're kind of showing their hand, but with this one, it seems everything's somewhat close to the vest. But most, like I was saying earlier, the majority of the justices did acknowledge that presidents have to have some type of liberty, but the question is, how much?
That was Perry Russum, ABC News reporter, covering Trump's legal case and the Supreme Court arguments there. And Rusty, I want to stay at the Supreme Court for the next segment, and arguments.
I don't have to go to law school at this point.
Entirely different arguments, awesome. But other very interesting arguments. This one deals with homelessness and the ability of states to criminalize that. We'll talk about that right after the break.
2:30 at KSL News Radio. I'm Tammy Kikuchi. KSL's top local story this hour. Several Utahns will be opening a temporary memorial for the people who have been killed in the Israel-Hamas war. Aziz Abba Zayed was raised in Gaza before moving to Utah, and he tells KSL.com several of his relatives will be remembered. He says he does not like Hamas, but he's afraid the Israel campaign is too much. Well, thousands of Utah college students are graduating this weekend, and that means they'll have to become full-time adults. Weber State grad Kinley Nielsen says it's an interesting economy to be entering into.
I think it definitely is scary just seeing how things are going up. Groceries are more expensive, rent's increasing.
Luckily, the future is bright for so many of our graduates. Nielsen says she starts her full-time marketing job on Monday. The electro slots are returning to Utah as the winners of the first Lego League Challenge in Houston, Texas. The father of one of the boys says they had to build a robot from Lego blocks.
They did all of the required activities, programming the robo, building the robo, and a project that has to be done.
The competition played out over 4 days. The students from Utah beat 152 other teams from around the country. What could an NHL team mean for Utah's wheelchair-accessible sports scene? 5-time gold medalist and Paralympic skier Chris Waddell says he wouldn't be surprised if a sled hockey team was formed at some time in the future. Your money at this moment, the market's all closed in the positive direction. The Dow up 153 points, S&P 500 up 51, and NASDAQ up 316 points. It's still raining and will be for quite some time. Coming up, a look at weather and traffic together. KSL News Time, 2:32.
We hope you have the right app on your phone for news. You probably have dozens.
But the KSL News Radio app, well, it makes our live stream super easy.
Plus, our talk shows are right there as podcast for your workday.
That's the app for KSL News Radio.
Odds are, if you have a 401k, it's set up with your payroll provider or an insurance company. I'm Jeff Jr. with Trajan Wealth, and if you're using your payroll provider or an insurance company for your 401k, the employer may be overpaying for the plan, the employees may have blasé investment options, and those blasé investment options may cost more than they should. Not with Trajan Wealth. Call us today, 801-899-7600. That's 801-899-7600.
Services offered through a third-party partner.
You're stubborn. Okay, be stubborn. Don't admit you have hearing issues, but they won't go away. You'll just suffer with them. But you don't have to suffer. My Hearing Centers will fit you with a high-tech hearing aid that's powerful and barely noticeable. So if you're suffering from hearing loss, or if you have a hearing aid but it's 3 years or older, you owe it to yourself to schedule a free consultation at My Hearing Centers by calling 801-701-1629. With locations from Ogden to St. George, be smart, not stubborn, with My Hearing Centers.
Hey guys, do you know your T level? Revive Men's Health here in Salt Lake City is helping you take that first step toward better health and enhanced intimacy with a free testosterone level test, exam, and consultation. Plus, for this month only, qualified patients can kickstart their treatment with a free supply of ED medication. Revive's customized ED treatments can provide immediate results, restore blood flow naturally, and even bring spontaneity back into your love life. With both in-person and telemedicine appointments available, plus free shipping directly to you, Revive takes the hassle out of treating low T and ED. Having an optimal testosterone level can change your whole life, and it starts with knowing your T level. Take that first step and book your free testosterone test, free exam, and free consultation, and kickstart your treatment with a free supply of ED medication this month only. Call Revive Men's Health Salt Lake City at 801-263-7777. That's 801-263-7777. Or visit ReviveMen'sHealth.com.
Advertising used to be simple. Your options were radio, TV, newspaper, and let's not forget the yellow pages. Now it seems like a tidal wave of options. Podcast, cable TV, streaming, OTT, CTV, audio networks, smart speakers.
On top of that, you need digital marketing for your website along with SEM, SEO, display, video, YouTube, email, and all the social media platforms.
Look, you're the expert in your business. Wouldn't it be nice to have an expert to market you? We are Bonneville Salt Lake, the local marketing and media company you know and trust. We reach customers across all digital and social platforms and have the reach of traditional advertising available as well. We find your customer anytime, any place, anywhere on any device here in Utah or anywhere in the world. We work to optimize your results with our in-house local team of experts, providing you with qualified leads, not just impressions. Contact Stephanie Palmer at KSL for a free consultation, including a complete digital audit with no obligation or cost to you. Email spalmer@ksl.com. That's spalmer@ksl.com.
Traffic and weather together brought to you by Sinclair's Dino Pay app. Save up to 20 cents per gallon. Here's Michelle Rowe.
Well, we do have multiple crashes. The first biggest one is going to be northbound I-15. This is going to be about 4100 south. That is moved over to the right, but it was blocking all center lanes of traffic. You're backing up to the Midvale area. Also looking at some other scattered delays on I-15 in the valley. Still working on this crash. This is southbound I-215's westbound on the ramp to head westbound on I-80. Still down to one lane going through that area. Murdoch Chevrolet, home of 2.9% for 6 years on Silverado. I'm Michelle Rowe in the KSL Traffic Center.
Rain will continue tonight and tomorrow with snow in Utah's northern mountains. Rain tapers on Sunday and Monday with temperatures rising back into the 70s. Right now, 50 degrees and raining in Salt Lake City. I'm Tammy Kikuchi from the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios. Listen online at kslnewsradio.com. We're Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
Inside Sources. Inside Sources. America's voice of reason. Boyd Matheson on Utah's home for elevated conversation. Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Welcome back to Inside Sources. I am your co-host today, Rusty Cannon. I'm here with the one and only Greg Skordas, and we are moving along. We've made it so far error-free, as far as I can tell, on my first live show. So.
And we're still at the Supreme Court here.
Yeah, that's right.
We've been all over the place today, which is wonderful.
Yes, I am loving it. Always wanted to go to law school, and we get to keep talking about legal stuff. So this is great. So this week was an interesting week with the Supreme Court, as we all know. There was another case that was very important. Where they heard arguments before the court. Grants Pass, Oregon. Have you ever been there? I've never been there. It's not far from us, but that
apparently
town,
in the southwest.
I think so.
State,
yeah,
yes.
Beautiful state. I'm sure it's a beautiful town. They're trying to regulate and reduce homelessness in their city, and they introduced a statute that bans sleeping outdoors. They're just trying to keep their streets safe, clean, all that stuff. The question is this legal, or does it punish the homeless for not having anywhere else to go? So your brilliant legal mind is going to walk us through this path.
Yeah,
this is an interesting question.
Yeah, let's talk about how it got to the Supreme Court, because there was a similar incident in Boise, Idaho. And Boise didn't necessarily criminalize homelessness. They said that people who are sleeping in the parks and whatnot would get a civil citation, and they would have to pay a fine. And of course, the homeless population generally doesn't have money to pay a fine, and so those fines added up, and they got more and more and more. And they finally, by not paying the fine, the city said, "Okay, now you're committing a crime by violating a court order. You're in contempt of court, so to speak." The Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, first of all, it starts at the district court, the trial court. It goes up to the Ninth Circuit, and they decided that the city of Boise was acting out of the realm, doing something they shouldn't have done. Grants Pass, Oregon does the same thing. Their conduct is very similar. They're penalizing people who are sleeping in parks. And really, the homeless population, they don't have any place to go, but the city doesn't want them there. And so the same thing happened there. The trial court said, no, city, you're doing it wrong. The Ninth Circuit said, no, you're doing it wrong. And finally, the Supreme Court said, look, this is not just a one-off now. We've got a couple cases. They happen to both be in the Ninth Circuit. And so the Supreme Court of the United States jumped in and said, we're going to decide this. And it's interesting, Rusty, because their decision is based on an Eighth Amendment issue. The Eighth Amendment prohibition against cruel and unusual punishment.
Yeah.
And the argument that the people representing the homeless is that it's cruel to penalize somebody for sleeping, for trying to just catch a break, trying to just get some sleep. And so what they've done is they've gone to these various cities and said, okay, in order for you to have a law that is enforceable, you have to show us that you have sufficient beds that are not being taken advantage of, that you have accommodations for homeless that are not being used. You can't just criminalize conduct if you're not doing anything to prevent it yourself.
So there'd have to be an open bed.
Yeah.
You're saying, hey, listen, you could go to this open bed, but you're not, and therefore we can do this.
That makes the city's case more palatable to these justices.
So a lot of their questioning, apparently, so they spent a lot of time talking about a Supreme Court decision from 1962, Robinson v. California, where they ruled at the time that the government may prohibit conduct, such as drug use, but cannot ban status of being a drug
being
addict.
An addict.
Yeah,
right.
exactly. So walk us through that. What the difference there? It seems so. If you put that on this issue, you're saying, could you criminalize the conduct but not the status?
And that's the problem.
Yeah.
So the conduct is trespassing in a park, sleeping in a park. You know what I mean? They're trying to solve the homeless issue, but they can't say being homeless is a crime. That would be ridiculous.
Yeah.
So what these cities are doing is they're making an end run saying, okay, being homeless is unfortunate and we should do everything we can to prevent that, but sleeping in a park is a crime. Or taking advantage of public resources and just deciding where you want to lay down is the crime. not necessarily being, so it would apply to you and I, even if we had a home, even if we have everything. You know what I mean? They have to make it so that it's not centered on homelessness. Of course, it is. It's a means to an end. It's a way to try to solve the problem. And so they're looking at that case, looking at it the same way. We had some interesting comments by some of our justices. Justice Sotomayor explained that the law would selectively punish people for sleeping outside, targeting homeless people but not others.
If a stargazer wants to take a blanket out at night to watch the stars and falls asleep, you don't arrest them. You only arrest people who don't have a home.
So, no, these laws are generally applicable. They apply to everyone.
That's what you want to say. Give me one example, because your police officers couldn't. And they explicitly said, if someone has a home and is out there and happens to fall asleep, they won't be arrested.
So that's exactly what you were just talking about. I mean, that's she hit it on the head. So in other words, what's your goal here?
Yeah.
And if it's to get rid of homelessness, you may be doing it wrong. If it's for some public safety issue or something, then maybe so. But here's another argument from another one of our justices. This is Justice Elena Kagan, who said that the law doesn't just punish criminal conduct, but the status of being homeless itself.
If you were to come in here and you were to say, we need certain protections to keep our streets safe, and we can't have, people sleeping in any place that they want, and we can't have, tent cities cropping up, I mean, that would create one set of issues. But your ordinance goes way beyond that. Your ordinance says, for a person who is homeless, that person cannot take himself and himself only, can't take a blanket and sleep someplace without it being a crime. It seems like you're criminalizing a status.
Yeah, so they go back to that very issue.
Right. And it's like you say, it would have been interesting to hear from some of the other justices who were taking a slightly different position. But it seems like at least these two justices are very skeptical of the way that the city is going about trying to solve a problem.
So I have two questions. First of all, do these attorneys ever just get speechless? Right? It just seems like you're really under the gun there with these justices hammering at you. Are there times at the Supreme Court where they're speechless and they don't have an answer?
Yeah, I've never been to the Supreme Court, but I've been to the Utah Supreme Court. I've been to the 10th Circuit, the Utah Court of Appeals. The answer is yes. Sometimes they ask you a question and you're just like, hey, I didn't write the law. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
I work your way out of the
I'm
question.
just the messenger here, Judge.
Yeah.
That doesn't fly very
well.
well.
So the second question then is the issue here with Oregon's law that it just goes too far. Meaning, if it was more moderate or more reasonable, maybe we wouldn't be in this spot. It seems like that's kind of what they're saying, right?
Right. And secondarily, what we talked about a minute ago, which is, are there alternatives? Is there something the city should be doing and is doing?
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, we've got a homeless shelter. We've got this. We've got beds. We've got open space. We've got counseling. We've got therapy. So there's no excuse for sleeping in the park. You know what I mean? Because the city's doing other things. But if you're not providing that and you're just criminalizing conduct, and I think some of these arguments by these justices were a little goofy, like if I'm just a stargazer and I want to sleep in the park, like, come on.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like, no one's going to do anything. But if you're camping out there for 2 weeks at a time, maybe that's a little more problematic.
Yeah. Oh, fascinating. Again, I wished I would have gone to law school. I should have followed your path, right? This is just fascinating stuff. I mean, this applies here in Salt Lake City. This is on everybody's mind.
Oh, yeah. You remember what we were doing at Pioneer Park a couple of years ago, and it was just a homeless encampment where we had it all sort of enclosed. Everybody knew where the homeless people were. But the businesses around there were going, hey, wait a minute. Why should we bear the burden of this? Whereas now they're separated. If you drive down Beck Street, I mean, there are homeless camps all along there. I mean, it's a mess. Is the city doing enough? Who knows? Is the county doing enough? It was a big issue in the last mayoral election. We'll see where this goes. We cut a couple interesting cases from the Supreme Court. Stay with us. We'll be back right after this break.
Get in zone, AutoZone.
Welcome to AutoZone. What are you working on today? Thinking about gas mileage. Changing your oil with a full synthetic oil like Valvoline Advanced can help your engine get more miles. Right now, you can get 5 quarts with an STP Extended Life oil filter for only $35.99. Get started on your next job today with the parts you need when you need them at AutoZone or AutoZone.com.
Get in the zone, AutoZone.
Restrictions apply.
Every business faces challenges, but complicated, expensive, and uncertain shipping shouldn't be one of them.
With USPS Ground Advantage from the United States Postal Service, you can avoid all the noise.
No more unexpected surcharges, hidden fees, or complex rate structures.
It's just easy, cost-effective, and dependable shipping. Tune your business's frequency to success and turn shipping to your advantage. Learn how at USPS.com/advantage. USPS Ground Advantage. Simple, affordable, reliable.
What's up, everybody? I'm Mike Wilson with Any Hour Services, and there's a good chance you've heard me talking about our free furnace sale. The one where you buy a new air conditioner and we give you a new furnace for just the cost to install it. About $400. Well, we still have a few more spots on our schedule we need to fill, so I'm extending the sale, but I'm not quite sure for how much longer. Definitely no later than April 30th, and once I think our schedule's full enough, I gotta pull these ads, so don't wait too long to call and schedule your free estimate. The main reason we do this sale is to give you an incentive to help us keep our guys busy when the weather's mild. And thanks to your help, we're able to keep our guys and keep growing. So if your furnace and air conditioner are ready to be replaced, you owe it to yourself to at least schedule a free estimate and get all the details about our free furnace sale. Just to recap, when you have Any Hour Services install a new air conditioner, we'll give you a new furnace for just the cost to install it. About $400. The furnace is free, you just pay the labor. If you think you might be interested, call Any Hour Services at 801-443-7400. You can Google Any Hour Services. You can even schedule online at anyhourservices.com. No one helps more homeowners than Any Hour Services.
At Fisher Investments, we may seem like other money managers, but we're different.
What makes you so different than the rest of us?
We ensure clients receive unparalleled service at every step of the relationship.
Tell me more.
Our investment counselors focus on service over sales, prioritizing clients' needs.
How do you make money?
We don't sell any commission-based products. We have a simple management fee based on the value of our client's portfolio. So we do better when our clients do better.
What about client portfolios?
We get to know each client, their finances, family, health, lifestyle, and more, and then we tailor a portfolio based on their specific goals and needs.
Your clients really come first then, huh?
Yes, we make them a top priority. Our goal is helping them achieve a comfortable retirement.
Wow, maybe we are different.
At Fisher Investments, we're clearly different. Learn more at FisherInvestments.com.
Investing in securities involves the risk of loss.
When you think of Utah's homeless, who do you see? They are people with names and faces, and many are in dire circumstances. They are men and women, and sometimes children. Many are living on the street, in a car, or in a shelter. Some choose to be homeless. Most do not. Many experience the challenges of addiction or mental illness. All are vulnerable. Homelessness is a crisis, one that affects us all. Utah is building a coalition of community leaders and concerned citizens united to end the plight of homelessness. Homelessness should not mean hopelessness. Learn more at projecthumandignity.org. A message from Utah Impact Partnership.
Springtime in Utah, and if you hate to paint, do what your neighbor Judy did. She called Rhino Shield.
After having the house painted with kind of usual house paint, I was seeing cracks appearing about every 3 years and just wasn't very satisfied with that.
Rhino Shield ceramic technology is formulated for our unique climate here in Utah and is Class 1 fire rated.
I can't speak highly enough about the Rhino Shield crew. They also were great at working with me to get the exact right color because I was very particular.
Utah, you too can have the 25-year guaranteed protection of Rhino Shield for 15% off the regular price.
I would not hesitate to call Rhino Shield, and I am just thrilled to recommend Rhino Shield to my friends and neighbors and family.
This offer is limited. Call 435-246-4466, 435-246-4466, or rhinoshieldwest.com.
Go Rhino Shield.
Set the hook on savings with the Shields Fishing Sale event now through April 28th, in-store and online. Peer into the depths with electronics from Garmin and Lowrance. Protect yourself from the sun with clothing from Hook and Sims, and rig your boat with a trolling motor from Minn Kota. Our passionate Shields fishing experts are ready to prepare you for your next fishing adventure. Buy with confidence, knowing you have everything you need for that next hook set at Shields. and Shields.com.
One of the reasons that I lost 34 pounds on soda weight loss and your daughter lost 42 pounds is that we changed our relationship with food, like Aubrey.
I think the accountability is the game changer for everything. With other weight loss programs, it's kind of just lose the weight, but you're probably going to gain it back because the knowledge isn't there. I feel like you're enrolling in like a school of nutrition with a whole new perspective on what food is and what it does for your body. That kind of makes the biggest difference, is it teaches people about food.
Because if you don't learn how to change your relationship with food, it's going to be a problem again.
Yeah, and that accountability that she's talking about is checking in with a nutritionist that you can do right from your home.
Exactly. It's so easy. I did the whole thing over my cell phone.
And by the way, you can have that relationship for as long as you need it in the maintenance phase after you've reached your goal weight. Find out how they can help you. Go to sotaweightloss.com, SOTA weightloss.com. Remember, it stands for state of the art.
Hey you, the bold business leader seduced by seamless integrations and flawless web applications that just make you feel. You crave a web development partner who doesn't just understand what you need, but anticipates what you desire. Meet Dev Simplify, where every code is a caress, every solution an enticing seduction. Experience the thrill as frustration gives way to fascination. Their teams intertwining in a seamless dance of efficiency and innovation. With Dev Simplify, it's about that moment when everything you wanted for your custom software just clicks. So lean back, take a deep breath, and let them transform your digital desires into reality. Want to meet? Visit devsimplify.com. devsimplify.com, where their developers make your software dreams your reality. devsimplify.com.
Attention Wasatch Front businesses and property managers. Have winter conditions damaged your parking lot asphalt or concrete surfaces? Call GoPave Utah and get on their schedule. GoPaveUtah.com.
With the 3 things you need to know this hour, I'm Tammy Kikuchi. First, Highway 89 is now closed for the weekend. It will snarl traffic coming out of Weber State's commencement. Second, a road rage incident in Spanish Fort Canyon leaves the perpetrator dead. And third, 2 men accused of cockfighting have been arrested in West Jordan. Right now, 50 degrees and raining in Salt Lake City. Back to Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Boyd Matheson divides rage from reason on Inside Sources.
And you're with us again on Inside Sources. I'm Greg Skordas alongside Rusty Canna. Rusty, it's been fun working with you.
It has been a fun day.
And when we started the show, I want to double back on something. We started talking about the conventions which are coming up tomorrow. The Republicans at the Salt Palace, the Democrats at Cottonwood High School.
Yes.
And when we talked about some of the more interesting races, and there are a lot. I mean, I don't want to downplay any of them, but open seats and contested races to me are interesting.
Yeah.
We didn't get to talk about one that's near and dear to me, and I'll explain in just a minute, which is the Attorney General's race.
Mm-hmm.
In a spirit of full disclosure, I ran as the Democratic candidate for AG in 2004, lost badly to Mark Shurtleff, very popular at the time. I ran in 2020 against Sean Reyes, very popular, lost badly. So I have a little bit of experience there.
Yeah, you know a little bit about it.
But right now we've got an open seat, and those are 2 examples of men who served in that position for several terms. I think Shurtleff probably had 4. I think Reyes has probably had 3. Anyway, it's an open seat, which has been attractive to a lot of people. I want you to talk to our listeners about a couple of things, because what we talked about earlier was the path to the primary.
Mm-hmm.
Do we have signature gatherers in the AG's race that are on the ballot, or is this going to be an open forum like where you've got to get your 40% to get to the primary?
Yeah, this AG race is a little bit different. You have one signature gathering candidate on the Republican side, which is all we're talking about right now. Don't want to shortchange the other side. And Derek Brown, he's gathered enough signatures. He's on the primary ballot no matter what happens tomorrow. The issue is you have 3 others that are vying for this Republican nomination in the Attorney General's race: Frank Mylar, Trent Christensen, and Rachel Terry. None of them gathered signatures. So one of them has to come out of tomorrow with 40%, or their run is over. And so that's the dynamic in that race. And Derek, former party chair, will be quite popular with delegates. Mike Lee has endorsed him soundly. And so the question is, can any of those others get to that 40% mark? That's the open question on that race tomorrow.
And if for some reason Derek Brown gets 60% in the final tally, he's the man.
Then
He's
it's really over.
He's the one that's going to be on the November ballot.
Correct.
Okay, so in other words, if he gets 59, somebody else gets 41, then we're going to have a primary. And I'm just assuming that,
correct,
because we could very well have 3 people. I mean, if 2 people get 40%,
they could. Yes.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Let me ask you another question about the Republican primary. Besides the endorsement of Mike Lee to Celeste Malloy's opponent, which is to me a huge surprise, do you expect any other surprises? And I know that's you don't expect a surprise, but what could happen tomorrow that maybe we're not thinking about right now?
There's all
that's
kinds of things that can happen. I mean, so having been around these for a while, there are a lot of tactics that get employed at the convention. Some good, some not. Where you could have all kinds of fireworks or very little fireworks, where it can be pretty much rudimentary, what have you. I'm not aware of anything that's cooking or what have you. Obviously, the news with Mike Lee in that congressional race yesterday in the endorsement, I think took a lot of people by surprise. And interesting on Twitter, where he announced it, or X, whatever we call it now, said there's more to come.
Yeah,
I don't know if that meant with that or something else or what have you. So there's that. But yeah, the conventions, whether it's on the Republican side or the Democrat side, there is quite an atmosphere there, and you could have all kinds of things happen. Everybody speaks. There's a lot going on.
And as I recall, Blake Moore, who is a very popular, he's only been maybe 2-term congressman. This is from the 1st district.
Yep.
Actually has challenges within his own party, which is surprising to me because he is so popular.
Yeah, he's gathered signatures. He's already on the primary ballot, and so depending on what happens tomorrow, this is CD1. Make sure I've got the names right. Yeah, he has collected enough signatures. He also has, I believe, a challenger, Derek Draper, as well. So we'll see how that goes tomorrow. That has not collected signatures as far as I know.
And what can you tell us about what's going to happen at Cottonwood High School with the Democrats? I mean, there are a lot of interesting races there too. It looks like the Brian King's sort of on the path to be the
his seat's open, right? Because he's running for governor. His seat's open, so there's an active campaign there. I think a couple candidates have gathered signatures or are at the convention. Then you do have some incumbent Democrats in the Salt Lake City area that are facing challenges.
Yeah.
Some have gathered signatures and some have not, and so there's a little bit of drama there on those local races, to where it'll be interesting to see how it shakes out.
Yeah,
sure.
and even the Attorney General's race is a contested race. I think they've got two people in that one from the Democrats.
Yes, correct. They do. Yep.
Well, I'll be watching that closely, Rusty, and I'll be watching and hopefully hearing from you next week, and you can tell us how that all shook out.
We'll all survive one way or another. It'll
Have
be
a nice
long
weekend,
day.
Our listeners, and thank you for joining us. Rusty, it was fun to be with you.
Hey, thank you.